If you know me as a player, then you know that I tend to stick to the default Xbox controllers that I mentioned in like all of my settings videos. I never really thought that a controller was a big advantage in gaming, but that genuinely changed when I found out about the company GameSir. A close friend of mine put me on, and I only heard good things of the Hall effect sticks, the customizable Deadzones, paddles, the price, and just so much more. I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, and I'm just gonna say that the product I bought originally, I loved it so much that I actually reached out to GameSir, and they were kind enough to send out a brand new unreleased controller for me to review and show you guys, the GameSir Kaleid. I am extremely excited and privileged to bring to you guys a 100% honest review of something that absolutely changed the way that I play video games. Before I get into the specifics of every feature that the controller brings, I want to give a short TLDR for those who simply want to know if the controller is worth it or not. For those who don't know who I am generally considered to be the best player to play on Overwatch on console, and I mean it when I say that this is the best controller that I have ever used. Not only does it bring every feature that a competitive player would want, but it also does so at a price point that is way more affordable than the other controllers in the market. And not only does this controller beat it in every way in terms of features, but it also does so at a third of the price. If you are considering getting it, I am telling you that you should and that you will not regret it. Also, side note, the sticks on it are actually PlayStation sticks. This means that if you use control freaks like me, you're going to have to order the same thumbsticks that you use, but for a PlayStation controller. Let's start with the Hall effect sticks that everyone talks about that literally make it extremely difficult for the controller to get any stick drift. Notice how I said extremely difficult, because it is technically possible to get stick drift, but the conditions need to be extreme, which I'll get more into later in the video. As a lifelong Xbox player, I personally have had controllers last a year or longer before getting stick drift, but I know many people that have stick drift within like 6 months. Basically, the difference between these Hall effect sticks and the normal Xbox sticks are that the Hall effect joysticks are working through a magnetic effect that has the two pieces of the joystick inside never touch each other, which is where the stick drift problems in other controllers occur. Now this can be a little confusing, but all you really need to know is that you will almost never get stick drift through repeated use of the controller, only through the extreme conditions as I mentioned earlier. In relation to Overwatch, besides the fact that the joysticks will last for a very long time, this actually was the answer to my ever-longing questions of Deadzones. With any other Xbox controller, due to their high chance of stick drift, you can't actually lower your Deadzones on Overwatch too far, because if you do, you get really bad stick drift. Before this controller, I had my Deadzone set on Overwatch to the lowest possible value I could set it to before receiving stick drift, which is what I recommended to anyone trying to mess with Deadzones. I haven't mentioned it up to this point, but all GameSir products come with the GameSir Nexus app, which allows for customization and is downloadable on the official GameSir website. I'll get into all the customization throughout this video, but right now we'll look into the Deadzone tab. You can set the default Deadzone on the controller to 0, which feels really good on its own. With this option, it applies pretty well into Overwatch, and it could actually be a secondary option to the confusing options in game. I took the pleasure of setting the options in the app to 0 for both sticks, and then lowering the Deadzones in game as low as I can, and it feels absolutely amazing. Next, I want to talk about a feature that is actually very unknown to 99% of console players, the overclocking feature. Before I get into it though, it is very important to mention that everything I talk about in this section is only attainable through a PC. And although that option isn't currently available for the Kaleid, they said it will be there soon, TM. But even though it is only attainable through a PC, once you've done it on there, any changes to your profiles will transfer over to your Xbox, even the overclocking feature. With that out of the way, let's get a brief explanation on what overclocking is and why it's so important on the GameSir. Every wireless Xbox controller starts at a 125Hz polling rate, which means that it comes with about an 8 millisecond response delay, meaning that every input on the controller will take about 8 milliseconds to have a response in game. Wired controllers, however, bring that down to a 4 millisecond response time. Historically, only PlayStation controllers were able to reach a lower millisecond response time, and that is due to overclocking. Overclocking basically allows a PlayStation controller to go from having a 250Hz polling rate to a 1000 or even 8000Hz polling rate. This eliminates almost any delay from the controller to the game, allowing for much finer play. Xbox controllers sadly do not have the ability to overclock on Xbox or PCs, but somehow GameSir manages to bring this feature to their controller. I believe that actually the GameSir controllers are one of, if not the only Xbox controllers that are able to be overclocked, even on the Xbox itself. This brings that 125Hz controller that has a 4 to 8 millisecond response time to a possible 1000 Hz controller that has little to no response time. At base, the controller is already better than any other Xbox controller because the default polling rate is at 250 Hz. So this overclocking feature will instantly bring an insane difference to anything else. Now, in terms of Overwatch, you will right away feel the difference, and it's kind of mind-blowing because everything you do on your controller will instantly be done in game. My aim was really good before the controller, but now with this overclocking feature, it's somehow gotten even better, which is low-key unbelievable because I didn't even think that was possible. It will change anyone's gameplay, and for a controller of this price, I still can't believe that it gives this feature. For the small downside of your headset not working, which it says here, which by the way you can basically ignore by having two controllers like me, you will literally have an overclocked Xbox controller that has almost no delay. The feature is really no joke. If you think that everything I've covered so far is all that the controller has to offer, then you are in for a pleasant surprise. Let's do a lightning round of everything that this controller has, some of which I've never seen done to this caliber for only $50. Let's start with the Hall Effect analog triggers, customizable on the GameSir Nexus app for super fast inputs that allow for faster reaction times in game. This I personally have set to the lowest, but for some it can be annoying because I'm not joking, even a slight touch will register as an input, so sometimes you'll just accidentally shoot. Next, let's move on to the never before seen mechanical and tactile button. Not only do these buttons absolutely feel and sound amazing, because they're mechanical like a keyboard, but this also means that the input on the buttons will trigger much faster in game. As seen here, it is a 0.6mm actuation distance. Don't ask me what that third one means. Now, for one of the coolest things on the controller, the lighting. Not only is it customizable in almost any way you want on the app, but do you see that little M button on the controller right there? It has so many uses, with one of them allowing you to change between one of the 4 lighting settings that you have chosen while holding the M button and moving your left thumbstick left or right. It's so beautiful. And if it gets too bright or dark for you, hold the button and move the thumbstick up or down to either lower it or brighten it. If going to the app to choose between one of your 3 profiles or the default is sometimes just a little too much, which honestly happens to me because I get really lazy, if you hold down the button, you can press Y for the default settings, B for whatever profile you have set to 1, A for profile 2, and X for profile 3. And remember, all of these profiles can be changed however you like for each specific game that you play. And there is also even a vibration customization. As I said at the beginning, I am honestly so honored to be able to present this to you guys. I hope I did the controller a service because what I'm saying really doesn't do it justice. It's best if you go and order it and use it for yourself, and if you use the code in the description, you actually get 10% off a controller that is already $10 lower than a regular old default Xbox controller. Love you all so much, and see you guys in the next one.